Hello, guys. I was just thinking, and I think I kind of was able to, for the most part, trying to decipher a good chunk of, not all of it, but a good chunk of questions that I've been pondering and contemplating and trying to decipher for some times to come. You see, it always puzzled me why America helps building a lot of economies where at least it stands as rather at a neutral ground, if nothing else, and watch those economies be built. And those economies at some points get destroyed. And the best way I could describe this, for the most part, was just merely this episode of Sinbad that I used to watch. And it was very interesting, this one particular episode of Sinbad and Alibaba. Probably know this from the the 1001 Night stories of 1001 Night. This one particular one was that when basically Sinbad and Alibaba are stranded in the sea and they're suffering near death experience because they haven't eaten for like so long. Suddenly they get rescued by a group of indigenous people into an island somewhere, and they're taken with them to that island where they were kept in a cage somewhere, but they're well fed, sort of like being in prison, but you're well fed in a very generous way, that they both start getting really fatten up, basically. Something that also happens in America, right? So coincidentally, right? And what happens is that question gets, rises in Sinbad's mind, says, why these people are feeding us so well, treating us so well, but they're keeping us in a cage. Says he's, like me, contemplating through this, he realizes one day that he notices a big column, if you will, or bar, or however you want to say it, rising to the sky. Basically a rod, I don't know how you say it, basically. Like these, similar to like the big ships, excuse me. I'm sorry, I speak English as a third language, so forgive me as much as there's nothing to be forgiven. Like, the ones that they hang the sorry, what do you call these? These big canvases they hang from the ships to try to control the directions. Yeah, you probably know by now what I'm talking about. I hope so. So how do you say that? So he, on top of one of these rods, he notices a skeleton, and he goes like, "Oh my fucking god! Now I know what these fuckers are doing. They're trying to fucking feeding us so well, so they can feed us to the vultures. Basically, as it means to be a good prey for the vultures, because they had a business out of getting those vultures, as many as possible at a given time, and try to capturing those vultures or hunting them. That was the job of this indigenous tribe. So at that point, he tells Alibaba, says, "Alibaba, we gotta get the fuck out of here, man. Any day or any moment they're gonna come. They're gonna fuck us, take us to up in the sky. They're gonna fucking crucify us up there, and you're gonna be eaten up by the vultures, Alibaba. Just figure something out, motherfucker, right now." So this was the best way I could think of this, basically. Uh, United States builds these economies same way they built the Iran's economy, basically in Shahstan, which got later on destroyed. Or similar partnership that they made even with Iraq. You know, Saddam Hussein, as the leader of the Ba'ath Party, was designated as a successor once the United States implemented the coup against the former leader of Iraq, which was democratically brought to power. This guy, his name is something Abul Qasim, something like that. And how do you say that? So yeah, the economy. Well, I'm not going to say it wasn't, but you know, it was that phase of at least a semi. It was not the bloodshed of ISIS that we're going through right now. It was not good. Saddam was a ruthless, tyrant, but at least it was a rather passive or static, if you will. Now that's not a good thing, but you know, I hope you understand the difference between after this 2003, the mess that was created and the whole nation was destroyed. And well, destroyed is actually not a really good word to describe the scenery. Pure bloodshed and fuck America, man. Anyways, getting back to what I was saying. So yeah, they develop these economies so they can pose them as a prey, so they can destroy them. And I could see that as that for, but now I kind of realize what is really going on, and I saw the bigger picture. You see, you gotta understand, they created a science called economics that basically is in a way, abstract science. It's a man-made science, literally, that as long as you can create also likewise abstract tools, you can do a great job of managing something and trying to basically bypass the impact or dodge the impact basically on yourself, just so you can kind of bounce over that impact to somebody else. I'll give you more sense of what I'm trying to tell you here. Basically, to destroy something, you gotta have to have something first built. You can't destroy something if you don't have a piece of material or substance, if you will. So what happens is that basically I don't know what would be the good point I can really start this, but I can think of the 1975 when Nixon untied or unpegged the US dollar from the gold, and he just went the gold standard, if you will, and developed this fiat money, which is basically money not backed by any tangible. It's just a very abstract piece of a thing. Now, inventing this fiat money gives ultimate leverage to the United States to rise as much as it wants, and also the ultimate leverage to try to, as much as it wants, go on spree of destroying and basically inhibiting other countries from growth. So what that means, number one, it can reach the highest level of assets, if you will, and number two, deter the risk of losing and being able to retain those assets. Now, here's the thing. Given that this whole thing is really a abstract thing, the reality is that the impacts here are not going anywhere. You gotta understand that. What happens is the United States is simply postponing the impact on its own by trying to bypass and bounce those impacts on other economies that it builds. And you can only go so far with that as long as you keep building and you keep destroying. The problem is that the material things that we have in the world are kind of limited, you know. The natural resources that we have are not going to last forever. Now, I know you might say, well, you know what, we went so far. We're going to create, kind of like what we do in America, we create fake value on the products so we can sell them for something after those things are over. Yes, but the problem is that those values you can create, you can sell to the people, but you can't destroy it. You got to understand, you got to have something that you can destroy. Now, I might be wrong here, but you know, ultimately, you're somehow susceptible to this whole thing called material. And as long as you have the material, and you can basically create possession, you can destroy things. Now, my theory by far might be even wrong, but I think I got a grasp finally of how the system works. The other piece of puzzle while I'm describing this thing is this. You got to understand that what United States also does here, the other advantage of the developing some industries, some countries in the world. I happen to be watching some videos on, number one, how in 1950s going to up to 1975, 1976, or even after the Iranian Revolution to up to 1980, 1981, Iran was the number one, or had the highest number of the foreign students in United States universities. Now, what happened to these university students? The idea was to train these people and send them back home. I'm just talking about one particular industry as the institution of higher education. So what happens is that you want to send these people back home as professors and leaders, so they can just kind of like in a hierarchical thing, they can go out and basically teach other students. And the whole idea is that now China has been after the Iranian Revolution happened and Iran went down, the Chinese and Indians took that over. Now, the whole idea was to create a supply of basically human capital that is at a cheap level. Same thing with the goods. That's one of the other reasons also United States makes this trade agreements and gave money away to China to try to develop their economy in a way, just so sufficiently enough that it can create a cheap labor market. Cheap labor of goods. Now, one thing that the United States does, these colonial powers, if you will, collectively, this Anglo-American brotherhood, that is, or patriarch, the whole idea is that, coupled with the tyrannic regimes, that is, Communism Party, perhaps in China, as well as like some kind of like Iran, you want to make sure that these resources that you're developing is purely meet to the extent that it benefits you and doesn't rise to the level of becoming autonomous, so it can rise on its own and become an executive body implemented in a way that it can pose as a rival to you. So they create these tyrannic regimes that support globally also as well. Prime reason why, then again, a situation with a country like Venezuela, was just like Iran, or just exactly like Iran. Yes, very exact copycat. A little bit slightly different, if you will, destiny, but in a very similar, exact copycat in a way. Both economies, rich, oil-rich countries, both economies developed, but here's a catch. We got a tyrannic son of a bitch leaders. One is a Shah of Iran, one is Hugo Chavez in Venezuela, which is only just meant to one thing, just so we can develop these things. So number one, we can have something that we can bounce our basically the impact of our economic recessions on them. Number two, we can have them as a cheap supply of labor and goods, services and goods, basically, that being education, whatever you want to call it. Man, these motherfuckers are smart as shit, though. Well, smart because I'm not sure because you see, you can destroy things to a certain extent. You can keep building and destroying. But here's the one thing that I really got to really have a sense of that really brought me to John Nash's level of wisdom, because he was the one that who proposed this whole thing as the game theory, where he said that, you know, actually us not competing with each other is a key of better success. Because, you know, the fact that we are actually coming to play, we're basically being reverse psychology induced to come in to try to compete against the United States in different means, to try to have a means of defending ourselves, our national security, that is our defense, being able to defend ourselves. This is this fucking, because the United States actually clearly, in a way, it does that. It goes around on these military adventures to Iraq, Afghanistan, and what do you think? In a way, quite literally is trying to tell the countries that elsewhere in the world, says, hey, you know what? Matter of fact, you know what? I want you to know you could be the next target. But here's the thing. You can start developing yourself. You can start coming to the play the game, and I actually give you some resources, and I try to turn a blind eye thinking that, oh, I'm seeing you growing. You know what? So you can grow. But my whole intention is just one thing. In a passive way, develop you so I can target you next also as well. So I can basically shift the impact of this whole intangible ways that I'm running this economy from myself to you. Now, you don't want to be a target like Africa, which is so undeveloped, that, you know, constantly in different ways also being targeted, because they're not even able to defend themselves, and they've got this whole awful the other. But, you know, you got to be in a manageable way. It's hard. That's the part that, I'll be honest with you, I don't have a really good answer how you're gonna go about such an economical devisement, a plan to try to be developed, yet not in a symmetrically developed, as to avoid falling to having that formula that United States can come in and basically decompose you. You see, that's one thing I don't have an answer for it yet, or not haven't thought it through yet. But this is one major thing, you know. I think we are somewhere so far. So I'm gonna keep this video where it is. All right.